All right, everybody, welcome back to Tango Talks. And tonight we are going to, well, it'll just be me. Angela isn't feeling too well, so I'm going to try to do this by myself. And we've known from the past that I am not very good doing this by myself. I'm not very good at just laughing anonymously. So let's see how this goes. And, if you want to chime in, I will certainly love that. And, we can get the show going. So we're going to be talking about um, the cost of Christmas. Financially, emotionally, and the psychology behind it. What's the real price of it all, and how to survive it, basically. Um, this is episode 28, and it's entitled "When Did Christmas Become a Luxury Sport?" And we've all been shopping for gifts now, and we're coming up on the 11th hour here soon. I just finished some of mine today, actually, and one of them actually going to get there Christmas Eve. So I'm not without my last minute shopping myself, but you know uh, it just feels like the world is exploded, especially online, and how did Christmas turn into $1,000 marathon? Um, it's is it inflation, social pressure, or are we just all trying to outdo Santa Claus? Um, again, it feels like a sport, or we're all out there trying to get the best toys and outdo each year. But let's we'll get into some of those later on in the episode. But again, this is Tango Talks, the Christmas price explosion, why we spend, why it costs, and how to reclaim some of the joy of Christmas. Um, just a little side note here, holiday spending hit records in 2024, with the average person spending over $902 uh, across gifts and seasonal items. That's, you got a big family, that's a lot of people that you're shelling out money on. So, you know, and before we get into the show too far, we're going to usually we talk about what I'm drinking, but we're going to offer up a nice holiday cocktail for our cocktail corner. Quick, easy, festive, spiced citrus cider recipe. Um, these will be all available. You don't have to write these down now, and they'll be available in the show notes on Thursday when the show is published. So let's see here. You need 4 cups of apple cider, one orange slice, 2 cinnamon sticks, 4 whole cloves, and a splash of bourbon or rum. I would probably do the bourbon myself, but I'm sure you could use pretty much anything you want in that. And you're just gonna let that simmer. You're gonna simmer that up, and the orange slices and spices for about 10 minutes. Strain it into mugs, and you can add, like I said, a shot of bourbon or rum, and there it is. It's simple, quick. It's perfect while unwrapping your curveballs for the season, and it's got a nice warming feeling to it. So let's see. So our first part of this show tonight we're going to talk about is the new holiday economy. Um, you go in for one main gift. I mean, that's me at any store. I go into any store for one thing, and come up with a shopping cart full. But you leave with accessories and protection plans and rush shipping, and boom, before you know it, now you've spent your $902. Um, and why, why have we gotten to this point? You know what I mean? Then you start the scoreboard, especially in family starts. Who gave what, um, you know, what did it cost, and and you kind of lose fact of what the season is about there. Um, another, um, again, it's just this time of year is stressful enough for people, and you know, um, a little another on-air fact here. NRF's 2024 survey showed a new record average. Most shoppers still finish in December with online as a top destination. I don't think that surprises anybody. But, between trying to work and host parties and shop ourselves, I think in-store shopping has dropped dramatically. I know I haven't gone Christmas shopping at least a decade, in a store. Right? It's just easier online. You can get them wrapped. Amazon does wrapping for you. And it gets shipped to a tag, and you're all set and done. No, it sounds a little impersonal, but you're still getting people things that you hope that they like and love. So, um, and I'm going to quote a lot of different things here tonight too, because we found a lot of information, and anything that I quote and reference to will be in a list documented at the end of the show on Thursday. But the experiences are rising. The total holiday budget, is up 8%, with experiences up 16% year over year. But let's unpack some of the psychology there, because gifting isn't just about stuff; it's identity for some people. Um, and I'm just going to do, before we get further, I'm going to do our little promo part here for ourselves here. Um, we ask every week, and we're getting there. We're up to 870 downloads on our show now, but we still need to hit that 1,000 mark. So, if you're here and you've listened and you find this mildly entertaining at all, just share, subscribe, and follow. It means everything to us. It allows us to bring fresh content, guests. We partner with uh, a company called Podmatch, and that's going to allow us to bring in guests from basically around the country, and that hopefully that interests people. We're hoping that it adds some excitement to the show, um, and bring in new talent, basically. And having you folks subscribe and sponsor. Gets us to that point. If you really want to help, you can go to our Patreon account, which is at patreon.com/Tango Talks 66. And you can really be a sponsor there. And there's different levels, and at each level you get a different price. Thank you for helping us out. And that money gets us to advertise and get these guests in to our show, and hopefully other shows. We have other shows that we'd like to do in the future, and hopefully we can get to them. But anyways, back to our main content, which is the psychology of gifting and why we spend so much or feel we need to spend so much. Some people gift to show love or status. It's meet expectations. You know what I mean? Like, you gave somebody something one year, you most people feel that you can't get, if you give $100 gift one year, you can't give a $50 gift the next year. I don't know how that works for some people, but I don't know if I look at that way. I look at it as, well, for us, we have we have 3 grandchildren, and we ask their parents to put together an Amazon list for us so that we can go through and pick out things that we know that they're interested in and that they're going to enjoy and love. And as it was pointed out to us a couple years ago, it's not so much the gift itself; it's the the attachment of who gave it. You know what I mean? It's a gift from grandpa's, so that means more than what the gift actually is. Um, some experts, you know, um, some experts have incited that it's a giver receiver mismatch. Givers prefer attractive gifts, and receivers prefer feasible gifts. You know, I don't know if I agree with that or not. But it's again, it's you always hear it's a thought of giving. Um, experiential gifts, strengthen bonds. Again, we're this is kind of going to drone on a little bit here. It's starting to remind me of being in psychology classes in college. You know what I mean? But these are some of the psychology, the facts behind why we do what we do this time of year. Um, experiential gifts produce greater improvements in relationship strength than material gifts. So, and that's from the Journal of Consumer Research. So, you know, again, you have to take some of these with your own personal take on the holidays and how you um, react to giving, buying, and receiving. Uh, Spending money on others, promotes happiness. I mean, obviously, what I mean. You buy somebody a gift, or in our case, we make a lot of our gifts. We have resources to do that, and it's just makes people happy. So that's something that plays into the psychology of wanting to spend money. You want to make people happy, so we do that, and um, a loss aversion and reference points. We feel losses more than the equivalent gains. Expectations anchor our sense of enough. You expect something and you hope that it meets your expectations on it. And sometimes it doesn't, and you feel a loss of that. Uh, and some of this, plays into, marketing too. We run an e-commerce store, and you hear, fear of missing out, FOMO, and 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 that's a scarcity and urgency thing. You hear that it's a limited time drop, or something's only got 3 left, and you want to rush out and get that thing. And then not some people are caught up in that. I remember growing up, my mom was always caught up with the sale price of stuff. And, we'd get home after grocery shopping at 6 different stores, and she'd be like, oh, I saved $60 this week on groceries. It's like, yeah, but you spent that $60 on stuff that we don't normally get. You know what I mean? So it didn't really make sense. It didn't calculate, at least not in my head. You know what I mean? It's like, you spent the gas running around, plus you bought stuff that we wouldn't normally bought, but you bought it because it was on sale and thought that you were saving money when you really didn't save any money. And I apologize because I've got 2 screens open here by myself, and my and it's very small text. But so let's move on. To like the hidden costs. Beyond the sticker price. Uh, you know, Money, emotions, relationships, and time. That all plays into like I just said. It's time for us. You know, we both work all day long, and we get a couple hours at the end of the night to relax, maybe watch a show or two. So time factor is something that really plays big into our shopping experience, and so Amazon, is our go-to place. I mean, we obviously, have other places that we'll get, specialized gifts from, but, can't beat the convenience of online shopping. Um, Emotional and, there's emotional and social costs to all of this too, Um, 89% of adults report holiday stress. Who doesn't? I'm surprised it's not higher than that. And 58% cite money worries, and 36% feel the holidays like a competition. Like I said earlier, it's a marathon. Like they got to get out there, get the best gift, and get everything that's on the list. And um, I think that if you listen to our last show, and we talked about basically the spirit of Christmas, and you know, it, you know, it, when you feel that it's a competition, you kind of lose um, the emotional connection behind Christmas and the holidays. And it, it it should be, well, for me anyways. I'm speaking on my own opinion here. you know it's more about the connections of the holidays, getting together with family, getting together with friends, and spending time together. And it seems like it's the only time of the year that people really make the effort to do that. And that always means more than what did you get me. But that's not true for everybody. There's there, especially for children. You know what I mean? Because it's always the pressure, peer pressure of what'd you get for Christmas. Like, and there's a lot of unfair pressure then put on the parents to um, make those expectations come real. Uh, you know, Early promos. Again, some of these hidden costs. Plays into the marketing part of it. Like I mentioned, early promos. You're pulling in those sales forward. And shoppers push for value over loyalty. They're they're not necessarily shopping with the people that they normally shop with. They're looking for what can they get that is going to help keep um, their purse on a little bit heavier, and keeping more of that cash in there. Um, you know, it, if your total holidays, here's the thing. So another side note here. If your total holiday spend equals 3 months of a favorite hobby or a weekend getaway, which is going to bring you more joy? You know what I mean? And maybe maybe you answer that differently, but maybe that answers some of your questions about how you're treating the holidays and your spending habits. Uh, your answer should speak for itself on that question right there. Bear with me here while I take a little sip of my cocktail. I'm drinking my favorite, which is the gin and tonic with the jalapeno olives in it. So, we're going to talk about the holiday scripts, I'll call them. The rules we don't know we follow. Uh, they're unspoken rules. Bigger shows love, and match last year. Surprises must be extravagant. Do they really? Do they? Um, Again, a lot of this information I garnered from a lot of top sites that deal in the psychology of the holidays and the financials of the holidays, and from colleges and sources. And um, these may be the unspoken rules, but boy, it's almost disheartening to think of, that you got to go bigger to show somebody love, and you got to match or exceed last year. And your surprises have to be, over the limit. You know what I mean? I'm surprised somebody shows up at the house with a bottle of beer. You know what I mean? That's enough for me. I'm not an extravagant person, but again, that's my look on the holidays and my own, opinion of myself. So, you could take that, with a grain of salt, I guess. But with all this research I did, they say recipients care more about fit and feasibility than flourish. So it's spend, 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 and not care, and be concerned about having um, resources afterwards so that you can survive the holidays and flourish afterwards in the new year. Uh, it's again, it's a buy world, and uh, it just seems more and more people are swayed by what can you get me, and there's a another, again, another side note, you're going to hear probably a lot of these tonight because, like I said, I'm referencing a ton of, um, excuse me, psychology um, sources that, will be listed on the website when the show posts on Thursday night. But, you know, gift exchange carries obligations, and I think we kind of, most people, at least the people in our circle, um, give, receive, repay. I mean, if you give something, if somebody gives you something, then you know, not that you have to do it right away, but you kind of, there's always that feeling like, oh, they did something nice for me. We should do something nice back. And why wouldn't you? Especially if it's somebody you care about or a friend or whatever. And it's, um, it, it helps bind relationships together when people act that way and carry out those give and receive structures. Um, and excuse me. And again, I apologize for all my pauses, but usually I have somebody to bounce stuff off from tonight, and I hope she's feeling better. But let's see here. So let's get into now the practical reset. So on our web page for Tango Talks, we're going to have some paper, some forms there. There's what's called a CAPE framework, and it basically allows you to carry out, a little bit of analyzation of yourself. So, gives you categories, anchors, and proportions, and experiences, and you match those up with some categories: friends, families, oh my goodness, colleagues, etc. Every once in a while, I get twisted on some of these words. And you put these together, and with some proportions, like 50% experience, 30% useful, 20% fun, and you can adjust these to your own personal needs and how to make it fit for yourself. But it allows you to look at these, like if you want to experience, local theater, day trips, or you know, um, some other, experience that you've been looking to do. This worksheet sheet helps you look at what would be, what's important. Do you want this or do you want that? And how do you get to that spot by adjusting your goals in those different areas? Um, and and what it does is it gives you the evidence to support your your experience. You know what I mean? Create stronger relationship gains. Gifts consumed as experience evoke more intense emotions. You got academic. This is from the academic .oup.com site. This is referencing them. Um, there's boy, there's just so much on. I could have had this go on for a 2-hour show with all the information I found, but obviously we are really trying to keep everything down to our 45-minute limit. And there's so much information on this, and I hope people um, recognize their limits and expectations around holidays. It would be it would be great if people cared more about the thought of giving instead of the actual act of it. Um, you probably can't do one without the other, I'm assuming, but um, we grew up being told that it's more about the thought of giving something, and not so much the act of getting what you got. Um, what you got should really be um, the smaller part of that. We should all be thankful that somebody thought of us and um, got us something. You know what I mean? And uh, whether it's something small or grand or whatever. So right now I'm going to pop into our listener mail. We're uh, anyone who's listening, if you want to, give me your best under 30 gift you've ever given, or, how about when did, spending feel like pressure and not pleasure? I mean, that's pretty much what we just got done talking about, pressure of the holidays, instead of uh, the pleasure of it, it's a one-sided thing for me kind of because me and my husband, we are both fairly creative and we have lots of creative tools and resources here in our shops. And so we make a lot of our gifts, you know what I mean? And we feel that it's more personable when we do that, you know what I mean? Because it, if we know the person and we can build something, make something to their style, you know what I mean? That fits their personality. And it, I don't know. I know a lot of people look down on handmade gifts and stuff like that, but I love it when somebody hands me something handmade because they spent, and I think we appreciate it because we know the time it goes into it. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily cheap gifts. You know what I mean? You'd be surprised what it costs to make a blanket or even make a wood ornament for a tree. There's a lot involved. Not only resources but time. So um, take a second look at those hand crafted gifts that people give you. There's a lot more meaning behind them than just them giving you a gift, and be appreciative that you were on somebody's list. Um, you know, Maybe somebody could call in and tell us about one tradition you changed and what happened. I mean, maybe um, whatever. You stopped getting real trees and now you've got an artificial tree. Maybe you went the other way around. Maybe you um, have always had an artificial tree and now you've got a real tree. How has that made your holiday different? You know, um, things like that. I mean, so call in. You can send us. The lines are open pretty much all the time. So if we're not online when you call, you can leave a message, and we will definitely always respond to those messages. Um, so let's let's do a little tactical playbook right now. Smart gifting without the spiral down that a lot of people go through. You know, um, we're going to do just some rapid fire tips here. And price transparency. Tally that total cost. Item plus add-on plus time. What is it really costing you? You've got tiered gifting agreements in families to avoid mismatches or getting multiple gifts of the same thing. Um, you know, and how about um, bundle the joy? Do one main gift and then a couple of micro ones. And one memory maker. What I mean, that would be awesome. You do if you did did like a bundle like that for people on your list. Instead of all high priced gifts. What I mean, you can do one high priced item and one little micro gift or delight, and then something that's a memory maker, something that you know the two of you will always remember, or the whole family will remember. Um, and do there's a 24-hour rule. I mean, I I am horrible for this because anytime I do a big ticket buy, and my husband will vouch on it, I agonize for weeks afterwards. Like, did I need it? Maybe I shouldn't have bought that? Well, maybe can I return it? And, you know, maybe before, I always wait for him to say, go ahead and get it. But for practical reasons, maybe before those big purchases, do a 24-hour hold. You know what I mean? Put it in your shopping cart and let it sit there. You know what I mean? And think about it. Let that urgency cool down a little bit, and maybe you'll think about that differently the next day. We always, you think that it's going to be gone forever, but it's usually back, in a week or two. So, maybe at a better price. Maybe you'll save yourself something. Uh, you know, Swap in some traditions. The story gift. You know what I mean? A handwritten memory. We just did a bunch of wooden postcards for a friend of ours that had her mother's signature on it. You know what I mean, and it just said, "Love you always, Mom." And it's just something simple. And it's just you want to sit on a little easel, but it it's something that when they see it, they're going to think of something. They're going to remember something, and it probably going to mean more than any other gift they get. You know what I mean? It's going to be there all the time. So maybe try to build a tradition, or something, a gift that's got a story behind it. I mean, that I think that's kind of cool. Um, you know, do yourself a budget guardrail, even a stop line. Wow. So we do this now. So I always find things on Marketplace or at garage sales or antique shows. Um, all this cabinets and furniture that I fall in love with. But our new rule is that fine, you can buy that, but something has to go. If it's if you want it, you can have it, but you got to get rid of something. So maybe that's a holiday rule you do. It's like, okay, well, we'll get the new whatever PlayStation, but you got to sell the old one. You know what I mean? Or give it to somebody or do something with it. You know what I mean? So it's a give take type thing. Um, and again, another side note here. Again, 'cause we pulled in so much research from all these different sites and people. Holiday shoppers increasingly trade down to stretch budgets. Prioritizing value over loyalty. I kind of mentioned that earlier there on, but it's tough. I mean, if you've got 12 people you got to buy gifts from, and they're saying the average is $902 per person, that's a lot of money, and not everybody can afford that. So maybe some people are trading down some of that stuff. Instead of getting the PlayStation 6, maybe you get the PlayStation 5 this year. It's going to be a lot cheaper, but you're still getting something really, really nice. And I want to say hello to my sister after missing her for a couple of weeks here. And it's nice to see you back on the show. And I love you too. um, let's see here. So where was I? Okay. So here's something that it surprised me when I was pulling all this information together. So a couple of years ago, we were kind of told by our oldest son that they weren't going to come up for Christmas anymore, and that they wanted to do their own traditions, which we completely understand. It's cool, but the reason they gave didn't really resonate at the time. That the kids remember rituals and being seen more than price tags, and it's true. When they come up here, we get them for a week. We're going to start. I think we're going to try pushing for 2 weeks now. It's magical time. You know what I mean? And you can have the same thing at the holidays. You don't need, especially younger kids. They don't need, you know, fancy, expensive toys. It's more the ritual. I mean, I guarantee you, younger kids are much happier opening up 15 gifts that maybe they're $5 or $10 each, as opposed to opening up maybe one gift at $200. It's that ritual of just opening up all those gifts and um, the excitement of it. You know what I mean, and being with their family when they're doing it. Uh, and so you know going along with that, maybe, and I'm just throwing some ideas out there for, again, we went through the whole psychology of why we spend. And so now we're just doing like some, you know, some little toss out ideas for, maybe these will help somebody, navigate the holidays a little bit easier. Maybe you curate a choice menu. Now this goes back to what I just said about we ask our son and daughter to, actually all of our kids to send us basically an Amazon wish list. You know what I mean? And it gives us the freedom to go through and pick things and stay within a budget. But we're getting things that obviously they put into a list. So, it's kind of like a structured, it's structured for both sides there. So, maybe create a curated list. You know what I mean? Maybe give people three options. It's like, what do you want for Christmas? I can get you this, this, or this. Um, and pair those. Pair those things with shared experiences. Maybe come up with maybe something on that list that correlates with something that you do either together or as a family. Camping or hiking, fishing, whatever. I mean, painting. It doesn't matter. Maybe if you got an artist in your family, maybe you get them a paint, a brush set and some paints. You know what I mean? And maybe that's something you do together. I mean, that's going to mean more than anything else. That time together, and it's a shared experience. From that gift. Um, skill gifts. I mean, we're big on for the grandkids trying to get them not necessarily educational gifts, but I just had to adjust my microphone. I didn't realize it's been syncing this whole time. I'm like, why am I slouched over? But uh, we're big on trying to get them not necessarily educational gifts, but thinking gifts. You know what I mean? Things that make them um, think. And again, that's an experience. You know what I mean? Instead of just something you push across the floor and you're done. This is something that engages them. You know what I mean? And every time they when they're playing it, they're like, oh, Grandpa's got this for me. So think of stuff like that. Skill gifts are instruments. Kits, classes, even. I mean, stuff like that goes a long ways. You know, and I'm just going to, another little note here on this topic, neuroscience note actually. Giving activates reward pathways and oxytocin. So longer lasting warm glow when kindness is social. And I think we kind of all know that. You know what I mean? If you get something nice and it's from somebody you like, it makes you feel good. You know what I mean? Who doesn't like to feel good? So I'm gonna do some closing reflections here. Reclaiming the season, and gifts are symbols of attention and belonging. You know, but and I'm stuttering on my words here, and I don't know why. um, and I agree. When you give somebody a gift, you know what I mean. You're showing your attention to that person, and you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, a symbol of love. I mean, it could be a symbol of caring. You know what I mean? And I have customers that come in that showroom this time of year, and I'll give them a hug. You know what I mean? And that means a lot to them. You know what I mean? It means that I didn't have to I'm just giving my gift of a hug. You know what I mean? And that's enough for them. It makes them feel good. You know what I mean? That there's that connection between them and our store. You know what I mean? So it'd be little things like that. You always hear money can't buy happiness. Well, I got a quote here from Dunn and Horton, Happy Money, hbs.edu, and it says, if you think money can't buy happiness, you're not spending it right. So, I guess there could be some reality in that. You know what I mean? They say you can't buy happiness, but I don't know. I think I'd be happy with a lot more money. Let me know your thoughts on that one. Um, you know, when after the show or during the show or anytime, share with us, one tradition you'll lighten and one you'll deepen. With download our the cape worksheet. You know what I mean? They'll be in the show notes. Send us some voice messages with at Tango Talks gift hashtag, and send us your best low cost, high joy ideas. And we'd love to hear what you have. Uh, I think that's about it. You know what I mean? And um, so I got a caller here or somebody online who just wrote, happier with the people I love around me, and I totally agree with that 100%. And yes, money can't buy that. What if you had all that extra money? Just saying, you could go on a trip together. But yeah, um, we always say it. Me and my husband always say it too. Yeah, you can't take it with you. And our children are doing very well, and our grandchildren are happy. So you know, who knows what we'll need, when we go. But I think I'm on the edge though with the whole money can't buy maybe it can't buy happiness, but it could buy you a lot of things that make you happy. How about we say it that way? We'll play on words there. But some closing remarks. We're getting ready to close up the show, and if you got anything you want to toss at us, feel free. You can go to hmprintdesign.com, click on podcast, and you can subscribe or just um, watch or listen to our podcast shows on there. We currently have two. We are in the works for a third one. I am trying to find a co-host for that one. I'll give you a little teaser on it. It has to do with two of my favorite things, which is Star Trek and Batman. And yes, we're going to find a way to combine the two. We are going to take Star Trek episodes and kind of um, juggle them around and play out what would happen if Batman were captain of the Enterprise. I think it could be hysterically funny and entertaining, and we'll see how that goes. I just got to find somebody who's willing to co-host, and it doesn't have to be somebody local because we can easily do remote hosting. So if anybody out there knows somebody who would like to be in on that show, I would greatly appreciate it. But anyways, this has been Tango Talks, the Christmas price explosion edition. Subscribe, share with a friend who's wrestling with the shopping cart, and let's make the season gentler, brighter, and ours. And happy holidays, everybody. If I don't get to talk to you before then, and good night.